It's really having a go. Oh man, it's pulling a bit of line. Woo! Nice fish. Rock fishing with beach worms. Hi, my name's Roger Osborne. Today I'm down at a rock fishing location and I'm actually using beach worms for bait. But are they any good off the rocks? And how do you even use them off the rocks? What is your strategy? Well, that's what I'm going to be doing today in this video. I'm pretty confident that I'll catch some nice fish and I'll be teaching you everything that I'm doing along the way. Stick around to the end for a free PDF download which will outline some vital keys from today's session. If you're enjoying these videos, make sure that you like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. It really helps me produce more content. Let's get into it. It's a cracking afternoon, just a beautiful day. The weather's starting to warm up and it's not going to rain, but it's a little bit overcast. I love those types of conditions. And I specifically wanted to choose a rock location where I could cast onto sandy patches in amongst the reef. The sorts of places where you're going to find fish like brim and trevally and even snapper. You still catch flathead on those sand patches as well, sometimes even whiting. And probably we're going to get the famous Australian salmon at the same time. So that's exactly what I've got here. I've got patches of reef with sand. I'm aiming to cast onto the sand. I don't want to land on the reef. I'm not really rigged up that way. I've pretty much got a similar type of rig that I use off the beach, but I'll explain that to you in a minute. But of course, first things first, I'm always safety focused when I go down to the rocks. I always wear my rock spikes. Just so much better when you've got a really good grip on the rocks. I wear a life jacket. I don't turn my back to the waves unless it's completely dead flat and I know it's totally safe. Also, I'm always just aware of my surroundings. I'm very aware of how big the waves are, which direction they're coming from, where they're hitting the rocks, where the safe places are. So please make sure that you do that when you go rock fishing. It's a wonderful sport. I've been doing it for nearly 50 years and I absolutely love it. But you need to respect the ocean and respect where you're going fishing. If you do that, you can enjoy it and be safe. So what I might do is run through my rig first of all. What I'm doing is I'm essentially using a paternoster rig with 2 hooks. I have my sinker on the bottom and then about 50 centimeters up above the sinker, I've got a 3-way swivel coming out. I'm still using a long shank hook, which is what I use off the beach. And then further up my line, I've repeated that. I've got another 3-way swivel with a leader and a long shank hook as well for my beach worms. My thinking was, often I have a bait that's below my sinker, but sometimes you tend to pick up more stingrays in these types of locations. So I'm wanting to keep my worm bait off the sand, just suspended above it a little bit. I think that may help me catch less stingrays, which would be good. And it's a great time of the day actually. I've got about maybe an hour and 20 minutes of sunlight before it's dark. Just the perfect time to be doing what I'm doing. So I'm going to whack some beach worms on. I went for a quick worm this afternoon. I think I only spent 20 minutes down at the beach. And I didn't count my worms, but I probably caught about 15 worms, roughly. Oh man, he's having a go, this guy. He's really putting his fangs into me. Oh look, there they are all over again. Look at those big black fangs. I don't know if they've actually got poison in them, but they can't actually pierce your flesh, these things. I think some people freak out when they walk on the beach and they realise there's these huge worms. Obviously they grow much bigger than this, that live under the sand. It's quite funny. This guy, they really do try to bite you, especially if you put your finger near their mouth, their fangs come right out. But I've found that when I do this, they can't actually pierce your flesh. They try and grab it with their black fangs, but they can't actually grab it. So anyway, I've played with him enough. He's going to have a hook in his fangs. Fangs a lot. But it'll all be over quickly for the worm. I'm going to put a nice generous piece of worm on like I usually do and pop it out there in amongst the reef. We'll see how long it takes to get a bite. in what we catch, I think my likely culprits will be trevally, hopefully some brim. If there was some nice eating size snapper, they wouldn't knock back a worm either. If they happen to be there, they would just wolf it down. But let's just see how many different species I catch using these worms off the rocks. There's a lot of places you could try this up and down the coast where you can cast onto a sand bottom off the rocks. Lots of places that are pretty safe. And really, when you're fishing on a sand bottom in amongst the rocks, it does give you the potential to catch a lot of different species of fish. All right, well, I'm ready to go and have my first cast. Just going to wander down and pick a nice little vantage point near the edge. The waves are just really rolling past here very gently. I think I'm going to come over this way. Now I can see, because where the rocks are, the water is dark in colour. Where the bottom is a sandy bottom, it's kind of more of a bluey green. But I don't really want to get snagged on the rocks. So it's going to wash my hands. I've just got to decide where I'm going to cast. I could cast right out past the rocks onto the sand, or there's a few patches in amongst the rocks. I might risk getting snagged and landing on one of the sand patches, I think. I'm just watching where my line lands. Well, that was pretty good actually. Pretty confident that landed on the sand. But I'm not going to wind my line towards myself. What my plan is that because I'm fishing bits of sand in amongst rocks, I don't want to just wind my line in and drag it across the bottom, because I'll end up hooking something. So if I feel like I've landed on the sand, I'm just going to leave it there and wait for a bite. And if I don't get a bite after a while, I'll quickly wind it up and get it off the bottom and pull it in up over the rocks so that I don't get snagged. There's actually an abundance of green weed down here, which is very typical of most of our headlands, but there's plenty of it, so this would be a great place to fish for luderick. I've done a couple of luderick videos. We love eating them, but this whole shelf has got a heap of green weed on it, which is all the natural food for fish like luderick and drummer. So I reckon it would be really worthwhile fishing for luderick, and it's quite a safe spot. I'm going to walk up over there. I didn't get snagged on the bottom then, but I think I can see a little bit more sand along there. I'm going to actually aim to cast more definitely into the sandy spots. I was kind of pretty much in the middle of the reef just then, but there wasn't a lot of sand where I landed, so I think I want to just move in a little bit closer. I've moved along the rocks a little bit, just where I can definitely see, clearly see where the sand is and where the rocks are. And I'm just going to flip it into one of these sandy holes. These sorts of places you can get a lot of brim in places like this. So we'll just see if we do get any brim. You may be able to see, I'm hoping you can see through the camera, that where you can see where there's dark patches in the water, which is obviously rocks, and then you've got the more bluey greeny patches, which is sand bottom. I'm not going to cast out very far. I'm just going to really flip it out into this sandy patch just in front of me. So I probably only cast about 15, 20 metres then. But we'll see what is sniffing around in those sandy areas in amongst the rocks, especially as it just starts to get a little bit darker. I think I'm a little bit safer where I just landed. Oh, I just had a bite, I think. Yeah, something's having a go. I've got a fish of some kind. That was quick, wasn't it? What is it? Oh, you're kidding. You are kidding. Would you believe it? 2 wrasse. That's not what I'm looking for. Okay, well, obviously wrasse like worms. That's funny. Okay, what are they doing out there on the sand? Have a look. Well, he's going back in. Easy to throw him in from here. Deep water just over the edge. Then I've got his brother or his sister down here. They're very slippery, these things. Okay, I think maybe I landed where it was kind of rockier than I thought then. I'm going to try and avoid that and aim for the sand a bit more. Well, the Wrasse gave me a bit of a hard time in that cast, so I'm going to see if I can land maybe a little bit more obviously on the sand when I cast out this time and see if that makes much of a difference. Just going to cast it in slightly a different spot. Just pull it back this way a little bit. There has to be some brim sniffing around here, especially as the light starts to fade. I don't think I've got it. I was getting little bites then, but just peckers. Still got my top bait, but my bottom bait has been unravelled a little. Looks like he might have a nice fish, that guy out there. It's pulling hard, whatever it is. That's a big drummer, yeah. That's a big drummer. Wow, awesome. I can see his rod bending a lot. I'm on. What have I got this time? Okay. All right, well, species number 2 is Brim. So before I got a double hook up on Maori Wrasse. This time, I have a Brim. It's a lovely Brim. Oops, I've got to watch out for his spikes. He's not huge, so I'm going to let him go. Maybe there's some more Brim in there. Maybe there's some bigger ones. Okay, well, that's 2 different species so far. I'm going to send him for a little high wire dive. He disappeared pretty quickly though. I'm in an elevated position here, and there's very obviously clear sand patches there with rocks, and Brim like hanging around in those sorts of places. So I'm not going to cast very far. I'm just going to fish in this sandy wash just out from these rocks, because there could be some really nice Brim floating around down in there. Just going to drop that in close. See if I get a bite just in the sand right near the edge of the rocks. Then if I don't get a bite there, I'll chuck it back where I caught that Brim. I felt some tiny little bites then, and all my bait pretty much was taken, so I'm not quite sure what that was, but obviously pretty small. So I think I'll toss out in a slightly different spot this time. This type of fishing really is, you know, you're just really testing things, prospecting. Can absolutely catch some really nice fish, but you don't know anything until you actually try. So it's always worth experimenting, because you can come across some you can discover some really good things that people don't normally do that are successful. So it's always something I love to do. I love to just try different things and not just do the same old all the time. Yep. Gotcha. Okay, so it's another Brim, but it's relatively small. So it's 2 Brim in the last 5 minutes or so. They're just not a large breed at this point in time. They're relatively small. So I'll just remove the hook, and he can go and join his mates out there. Okay, well, want a bigger one. Yeah, gotcha. This one's pulling a little bit harder, actually. It's definitely fighting a bit harder. What do I got here? Species number 3, black drummer. Okay, black drummer on beachworms. That's a first for me. Never caught a drummer on beachworm before. Oops. Well, I'm going to let this little guy go. He's too small. But he pulled fairly hard, actually. Like that bit of beachworm. So in he goes. I'll just rebait, make sure I've got plenty. Whack it back down there again. I've only got probably another 30 minutes of light, actually. That's enough to catch. I haven't caught anything for dinner yet. I've caught 2 wrasse, 2 brim, and a drummer in about half an hour. Alrighty, let's see what bites now. It's just that time of the day. Right now it's a great time to be fishing off the rocks. There's obviously a lot of different ways that you can fish off the rocks, a lot of different methods. Whenever you hook a drummer off the rocks, they are very hard fighting fish and they immediately go for the closest cover. And what I mean by that is a cave or going under a rock. So you might have noticed when I had that fish, I could see he was darting really hard to my left. Even though he wasn't a big drummer, he was still pulling pretty hard and I'm using light gear. So I pulled my rod in the opposite direction to which the fish was traveling. I'm trying to keep him away or prevent him from going in underneath the rocks because there's quite a big black rock down there and he was heading straight for it. So you've only got to lose a couple to realize, hey, I can't let that happen. I've got to put pressure in the opposite direction. You might have found that when you've been fishing, you think, what keeps breaking me off? Well, they could be drummer. So if you ever hook drummer, you can't be gentle with them. You've got to put opposing force in the opposite direction to which they're traveling. And you'll have much more success if you do that. Gee, I just saw a massive stingray go past down there. That's huge. That is very big. Now I put in a bigger cast that time because I've just been flopping it in close to the shore. I've been catching undersized fish. I can tell where I landed just then. It's a little bit more what you'd call broken reef. It looks like there's a bit of sand, patchy sand and rocks. So I risk getting snagged a little bit, but I want to cast in different spots to see if I can find where there are some good quality fish. During this session, I'm not burleying at all. However, burley off the rocks does generally make a huge difference. You catch a lot more fish when you use burley, and I reckon today if I was burleying in these washes in these sandy washes close to shore with some mushed up pilchards or chook pellets, I think I would definitely increase my catch because I'd be able to draw some fish in around more. I actually realised when I got out here, I thought, man, would have been a good idea to bring some pilchards, but that wasn't my whole objective. My main thing was to fish with beachworms. Normally I burley if I'm fishing using other methods. So I'm going to put that up here. For the next time I do this with beachworms, I think I'll make sure, hang on, I just had a bite then. Whoa, look at that. This is a solid fish actually. Now I've only got 15-pound line on here, so I don't know what this is. It could be some sort of bottom dweller, I'm not sure. But it feels a bit trevally-like because it's pumping. The challenge is it might be, depending on what it is, it might be too heavy for me to lift up. Hopefully I can lift it up. I'll get it in away from the rocks, but it bit fairly aggressively. It's definitely the biggest fish I've hooked so far today. Oh yeah, look, it is fighting a fair bit actually. I think it feels like a decent sized trevally, that's what I think. It's really having a go. Oh man, it's pulling a bit of line. Woo! Nice fish. Is it a trevally? That's the question. Oh wow. Wow. No, it's actually a salmon, I think. Yeah, it's your good old Aussie salmon. Look at that. He's pretty solid. I'm going to try and lift him up. There's a stingray following him. I'm going to try and lift this. Oh, no way. Have I got a stingray and a salmon? I don't know if I'm going to be able to lift them up. This is only a light line. Look at that. Would you believe I do? I have got quite a large stingray and a salmon. Look at that. Double hook up on the worm. Not actually, it's a little bit, I might have more chance over here. If I drag them along here, I can wash them up with a wave. I should have thought about that. Yeah, this is what I'll do. I can wash them up onto this shelf when the next wave comes. Duh, why didn't I think of that before? Just going to wait for the next big wave, which is coming. Here we go. Beautiful. Wow. Can you believe that? Oh well, it didn't cause any damage to my equipment. There was just a fair drop over there where I was standing. There was quite a drop. Now you know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to keep that stingray. I've talked about it a bit, but it looks actually like a good size to get a couple of nice flaps off it for eating. And of course I caught the salmon as well. I think I'll let the salmon go and keep the stingray. That's the light is starting to fade. I'm just going to ping it out the back, kind of out into that broken reef area where I got that stingray and salmon. So I'm going to put a bit of a bigger cast in and then just wait for a bite. I'm a bit further along the shelf where I could easily land a fish now. I was kind of up in a high spot, but where I am here, there's a flat shelf where the waves are. You can easily wash a fish up, so let's just see what happens this time. But so far that's Maori wrasse, brim, drummer, salmon and stingray, 5 different species on the worms off the rocks. I can see where this would work really well in a lot of different locations that I know. I chose this spot today because of the wind, because the wind was blowing from the north. But there are other places I know that would have been facing into the wind today that would be probably really good. I did think it was possible to get a salmon in this sort of zone, and I did, so that was good. I'm just winding it in because I think I'll toss out the same place I cast before, but I just want to get up and over the reef so I don't get snagged. Well, here it comes. I could feel I was getting a few little nibbles out there. Whoops. So most of my bait is actually gone. I'm going to try casting where I got that salmon and the stingray before, just to see if there's more action out there while I've still got a little bit of light. So I've been fishing, oops, what did I do there? I've been fishing for about an hour in total at this point. This time of the year, the snapper are spawning on the outer reefs all around Australia. There's a lot of snapper being caught at the moment. It's tempting to get my boat out and go for a bit of a wander. Oh, I've actually got something. It might be another stingray. Because it was sitting on it. I'm going to walk over to the left. Is it another stingray? That's the question. What is it? Yeah, it is another stingray. They're a little bit bigger here than on the beach. You get a lot of these on the beach, but they're smaller generally. These ones are a bit bigger. Here comes a wave, so I'll be able to lift him up with the next wave. Here we go, 1, 2, 3, up. Oh, it's only a small wave, but I was able to get him most of the way up. Always got to watch where you're walking, especially when it starts to get a little bit dark. Oh, lift him up. Oh, he's too heavy. I'll grab my line, lift him up by the line. He's another solid one, actually. But he hasn't swallowed it, so it'll be easy to release him. If you'd like a free PDF download of some vital keys from today's session, hit the link in the corner or in the description below. Well, I'm going to call it quits on the rocks. It's getting pretty dark now. I do have a head torch I could hang around, but I think I might have a sneaky cast off the corner of the beach on the way back to the car. It's been a great session though, a lot of fun in a pretty short period of time. I've caught a few different fish and it's been a good little test with the beach worms in this particular location. These places often change a lot. The sand moves around. Sometimes you've got more sand, less sand, but I think it's a really good option off the rocks. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again soon.